The stars burned cold and silent over Verathan Prime when Marcus Cole crashed his cargo ship into the dying world 30 cycles ago, and everything he knew about his quiet little life ended in fire and twisted metal. He had been a simple man back then, or so he told himself, just another human pilot running supplies between forgotten outposts where nobody asked questions, and nobody cared about your past. And that was exactly how Marcus liked it, because the past was something he had buried deep down where it could never hurt anyone again. The crash should have killed him, but humans were stubborn creatures, and Marcus dragged himself from the burning wreckage with blood in his eyes and pain screaming through every nerve in his body. Yet still he moved, because giving up was simply not something his kind understood how to do. That was when he heard it, a sound so small and weak that it should have been lost in the roar of flames, a tiny cry that pulled at something ancient and protective inside his chest. He found her among the destroyed remains of what had once been a royal convoy. Dozens of Verathenian guards lay dead around a shattered transport pod, and inside that pod, wrapped in ceremonial silks that now burned at the edges, was a larva no bigger than his forearm. Her skin glowed with faint bioluminescence, flickering like a candle about to go out. And Marcus knew, without understanding how he knew, that this small creature was dying. He should have walked away, because this was not his world and not his problem and not his species. But Marcus Cole looked at that tiny dying thing and saw something that made his heart crack wide open. He saw himself, alone and abandoned and fighting against an uncaring universe. So he picked her up, this strange alien child, and he held her against his chest where she could feel the warmth of his body and hear the steady beating of his human heart. And he whispered words that she could not understand, but somehow still heard. "I've got you," he said. "You're going to be okay. I promise." The Verathenian Council arrived 3 days later to find their entire royal bloodline dead, except for one larva being kept alive by a battered human who had not slept since the crash. And they did not know what to make of this situation at all. "The child has bonded with him," their scientists reported with confusion and perhaps a little disgust. "He initiated a host bond when he saved her, and breaking it now would kill them both." The council debated for many hours while Marcus sat in a corner and fed the larva nutrient paste and sang her old Earth lullabies that his own mother had sung to him a lifetime ago on a world that no longer existed in the form he remembered. In the end, they had no choice, because the larva was the last of the royal line, and she would die without her human. So they allowed Marcus Cole to raise the future queen of the Verathenian Empire. He named her Sirith, because it sounded like a Verathenian name, but also like Sarah, which had been his grandmother's name. And he poured into her everything good that humans had ever created, their stories of heroes and sacrifice, their songs of love and loss, their stubborn and beautiful refusal to accept that anything was impossible. She grew fast, as Verathenians did, and within 5 cycles she stood taller than Marcus, with powerful limbs covered in iridescent scales, and eyes that glowed like twin moons. Yet when she looked at the small, soft human, she saw only her father. "Why do the others look at you with pity?" she asked him once, when she was still young enough to ask such innocent questions. Marcus smiled, that sad, wise smile she would come to know so well, and said, "Because they see only what I am on the outside, and they think that is all there is. What else is there? Everything that matters." Little star, the cycles passed, and Sirith grew into her power and her birthright, and the council, who had once debated whether to let her die, now bowed before her as she took the throne of an empire that spanned 12 star systems. Queen Sirith Velkorath. They called her the Radiant One, the Empress of Light, and her name was spoken with respect and fear across 100 worlds, because she had become the greatest warrior her people had produced in generations. She commanded fleets that could crack planets, and armies that numbered in the billions, and warlords who had conquered entire civilizations thought twice before crossing into Verathenian space. But beside her throne, in a simple chair that looked almost comical next to all that imperial grandeur, sat Marcus Cole, graying now and weathered by time, but still present, still steady, still reading old Earth novels on a datapad that was held together mostly by hope and repair tape. The courtiers whispered about him behind elegant hands, and wondered why their magnificent queen kept this weak little creature round. And they decided that it must be sentiment, a childish attachment that she would surely outgrow. He is a liability. Her advisors told her more than once. He makes you look soft. Sirith would fix them with those glowing eyes that had learned their warmth from a human's gaze and say, "My father is not a topic for discussion, and if you mention him again, I will remove your tongue and feed it to the void sharks." They learned to stop mentioning him. Marcus never seemed to notice or care what others thought of him, and he spent his days reading and gardening in a small plot he had carved out of the palace grounds and telling terrible jokes that only Sirith laughed at and being utterly unremarkable in every possible way. That was exactly what he wanted them to think, because Marcus Cole had learned long ago that the most dangerous thing in the universe was not strength or speed or size. It was being underestimated by those who measured threat only by what they could see, and there was so much about Marcus Cole that nobody could see, so much that even Sirith did not know about the quiet human who had saved her life and raised her with gentle hands and endless patience, so much that the galaxy was about to learn in the worst possible way. For now, though, there was peace, and Marcus was content to sit in his little chair beside his daughter's throne and read his books and pretend to be exactly what everyone believed he was, just a harmless old man living out his final years in comfort. He had almost convinced himself that the pretending could last forever. He was wrong, and the proof of that was already burning its way across the stars toward them, hungry and unstoppable and coming for everything he loved. The alarms started screaming at midnight when the stars themselves seemed to go dark, and Sirith rushed to the command center with her heart pounding in her chest, because she had never heard that particular alarm before. It was the sound of total war. "What is happening?" she demanded as her generals scrambled around holographic displays that showed something impossible, something that made even the bravest warriors in the room go pale with fear. "My queen," her admiral said with a voice that trembled despite his best efforts to control it. "The Kethvari have come." The name fell like a death sentence, because every species in the galaxy knew that name, knew it the way children knew the names of monsters from their darkest nightmares. The Kethvari Dominion did not conquer worlds. They consumed them, they erased them. They left behind nothing but empty rocks and the echoes of screaming. No one had ever defeated them. Not the ancient empires that had ruled for 10,000 years. Not the warrior races who lived only for battle. Not the genius species who had mastered technologies beyond imagination. The Kethvari came, and the Kethvari won, and that was simply how the universe worked. Now their armada hung in space at the edge of Verathenian territory. Thousands of bioships that pulsed with sick organic light, living weapons grown in the spawning pools of a homeworld that existed only to create destruction, and they were hungry. The main display flickered, and a face appeared that Sirith knew she would see in her nightmares for the rest of her life, however long or short that might be. Warmaster Voroth the Unbroken stood 12 feet tall with a body that looked like it had been designed by combining every predator in the universe into one terrible form. Blades grew from his arms, and his eyes burned with a cold intelligence that had orchestrated the extinction of dozens of species. Verathenian queen. He spoke, and his voice was like stones grinding together. "I am Voroth, and I bring you the gift of a choice." "What choice?" Sirith asked, and she was proud that her voice did not shake. "Surrender your throne. Surrender your worlds. Surrender your people to serve the Dominion, and I will grant you a quick death." Voroth smiled, and it was horrible. "Refuse, and I will make your extinction last 1,000 years. I will breed your descendants as cattle. I will turn your homeworld into a feeding ground, and I will personally ensure that the universe forgets your species ever existed. You give me 3 rotations to decide." The transmission ended, and silence filled the command center as every person in the room understood that they had just received a death sentence. The council gathered within the hour, and the arguments began immediately as fear made everyone speak to loud and to fast and propose solutions that ranged from desperate to impossible. "We must flee," one advisor said. "Take what ships we can and run to the far edges of the galaxy. The Kethvari always hunt down those who run," another replied. "There's no escape, then we fight," a general declared with false bravery. "We show them that Verathenians do not surrender, and we die gloriously while accomplishing nothing." Sirith listened to them argue and felt something cold settling in her chest, a feeling she had not experienced since she was a larva dying in the wreckage of her convoy Despair, because she understood with terrible clarity that there was no winning this. Her empire was strong, but the Kethvari had destroyed empires 100 times more powerful. Her fleets were mighty, but the Kethvari bioships healed faster than weapons could hurt them. Her soldiers were brave, but the Kethvari felt no pain and no fear and no mercy. She had read the histories and studied the tactics and prepared her whole life for war. And none of it would matter, because the Kethvari were simply beyond anything she could fight. When the council finally exhausted itself and filed out to prepare for a war, they knew they could not win. Cirith did something she had not done since she was a child. She went to find her father. Marcus was on the observation deck as she knew he would be, sitting in his favorite chair with his datapad forgotten in his lap while he stared out at the stars that now held death instead of beauty. He did not turn when she entered, but he knew she was there, because he always knew. You have heard, she said. The whole palace heard. The alarms were quite loud. Cirith walked to stand beside him, and for a long moment, they both looked out at the distant lights of the Kethvari armada. I am scared, she admitted, and it was the first time she had said those words out loud since she was small enough to fit in his arms. I know they have destroyed species that were old when the universe was young. Father, they have broken empires that conquered galaxies. What chance do we have against such a force? Marcus was quiet for a long time, and Cirith wondered if perhaps he had no answer. If perhaps even his stubborn human optimism had finally met something it could not overcome. Then he set down his datapad and turned to look at her, and she saw something in his eyes that she had never seen before. It was not fear, and it was not despair, and it was not even hope. It was something harder, something colder, something that made her ancient predator instincts suddenly very alert. Cirith, he said quietly, there is something I never told you about Earth, about humanity, about what we really are. What do you mean? I mean that everything you think you know about humans is wrong. Everything the galaxy thinks it knows about us is a lie. A very careful and deliberate lie that we have been telling for a very long time. He stood up and walked to the window, and his reflection showed a face she did not quite recognize. Not the gentle father who had raised her, but someone else. Someone who had been hiding behind that kindness all along. I mean that the Kethvari have never fought anything like humanity before. His voice had changed too, harder now and colder, like metal being drawn from a forge. And I think it is time I showed you what that means. Cirith looked at the stranger who wore her father's face and felt a chill run down her spine, because she was suddenly very certain that the universe was about to become a very different place. What are you, father? She asked in a whisper. Marcus Cole turned to face her and smiled, but it was not the warm smile she knew. It was the smile of something old and dangerous that had been sleeping for a very long time. I am what all humans are, he said, a survivor of the apocalypse, and I think it is time the Kethvari learned why that matters. Outside the window, the stars burned cold and silent, and somewhere in the darkness the Dominion waited to destroy everything Cirith loved. But for the first time since the alarms had started screaming, the Queen of the Verathenian Empire did not feel quite so afraid. They sat together in Marcus's private quarters where no listening devices existed, because he had swept for them every single day for 30 years. And Cirith realized that she had never questioned why her father did that. Now she understood that she should have asked many more questions a long time ago. What I am about to tell you cannot leave this room, Marcus said. Not because I am ashamed of it, but because humanity has spent centuries making sure no one knows. And if the wrong people learn the truth, everything we have built will come crashing down. I will keep your secrets, Father. I always have. Marcus nodded and took a deep breath, and began to speak about things that made Cirith's blood run cold. The galaxy believes that humans discovered faster than light travel and spread across the stars as peaceful explorers and humble traders. He said, that is not true. We did not leave Earth because we wanted to explore. We left because we had to escape. We were running from ourselves. I do not understand. 300 years before I was born, humanity fought a war, but not against aliens or monsters or outside threats. We fought against each other, human against human, nation against nation, and we nearly destroyed ourselves completely. Cirith had heard of civil wars before, because many species had them. But the way her father spoke made her think this was something different. The last war lasted for 15 years, Marcus continued. And in those 15 years, humanity used weapons that cracked continents and boiled oceans. We poisoned our own atmosphere and burned our own cities and killed billions of our own kind. Not because we had to, but because we could not stop ourselves. Because the anger and the fear and the hatred had grown too strong to control. His eyes were distant now, looking at something far away and long ago when it finally ended. There were fewer than 1 billion humans left on a planet that could barely support life anymore. The skies were black with ash and the water was poison and the land was scarred with wounds. That would take centuries to heal. How did you survive such destruction? Because that is what humans do. Little star, we survive. We survived ice ages that lasted 10,000 years and plagues that killed half our population and famines that reduced us to eating the dead. And we survived our own weapons too. We crawled out of the radioactive ash and we rebuilt everything from nothing and we kept going. Because stopping was not something we understood how to do. Marcus stood and walked to a small cabinet that Cirith had always assumed held nothing but old books. But when he opened it, she saw weapons hidden there. Human weapons that looked primitive, but somehow terrifying. The survivors made a choice, he said. They decided that humanity would never fight that kind of war again. Not because we could not, but because we had proven that we were too dangerous to be allowed. So they signed the collapse treaties and they banned the old weapons. And they agreed to scatter across the stars and pretend to be harmless. Pretend? The galaxy found us while we were still recovering. Still traumatized, still horrified by what we had done to ourselves. And they saw small soft creatures with no claws and no armor and no obvious threat. And we let them believe that is all we were because we were afraid of what would happen. If they knew the truth, what truth? Marcus picked up one of the hidden weapons and held it carefully, almost lovingly. The truth that every human carries the knowledge of extinction in their blood. That our scientists learned how to split atoms and engineer plagues and create weapons that could sterilize entire planets. That our generals commanded armies of millions and planned campaigns that killed more people than some species have ever had. That our soldiers fought in conditions that would break any other creature in the galaxy and kept fighting anyway. He turned to face his daughter with eyes that burned with something ancient and terrible. The truth that humans are not the gentle, peaceful species we pretend to be. We are survivors of our own apocalypse, and the things we learned in that darkness never went away. We just buried them deep and hoped we would never need them again. Cirith felt her understanding of the universe shifting beneath her feet. And you, Father, what were you before you crashed on my world? Marcus was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke his voice was heavy with old pain. I was a strategos, a war planner, one of the last people trained in the old ways before the treaties made such knowledge forbidden. I helped design the weapons that ended the last war. I created strategies that killed millions. I was very, very good at destruction, and I hated myself for it. Why did you leave Earth? Because I could not look at what I had helped create and keep living there, so I ran. I became a cargo pilot in the forgotten corners of the galaxy, and I tried to forget what I was. And for a while I succeeded. He set down the weapon and walked to his daughter and took her hands in his. Then I found you. This tiny dying thing that needed someone to save her. And I thought maybe that was my chance to become something better. Maybe if I could raise one good thing in this universe, it would make up for all the terrible things I had done. You did raise something good. Father, I know. And I am proud of you every single day. But now the Kethvari are coming for everything we love, and I have to make a choice. I can stay buried and watch your empire fall, or I can become the thing I swore I would never be again. What thing? Marcus looked at her with eyes that held 30 years of peace, crumbling away to reveal something older and colder underneath. A human at war. And that is the most dangerous thing in the universe. He squeezed her hands, and his grip was stronger than she had ever realized. The Kethvari have conquered many species, but they have never faced us. They have never fought creatures who survived their own extinction, who understand destruction on a level that most races cannot even imagine. Can you stop them? I do not know, Marcus admitted, but I know that if we are going to die, then we are going to make them pay for every inch in blood and fire and screaming, because that is what humans do. We do not surrender. We do not give up. We make our enemies wish they had never heard our name. He smiled, and it was sharp and terrible. And beautiful the Kethvari want a war? Then let me show them what war really looks like. Sirith looked at her father, the small, soft human who had sung her lullabies and taught her kindness, and pretended to be harmless for 30 years. And she understood at last why the galaxy had never needed to fear the Verathenian Empire. The real monster had been sitting quietly beside her throne the whole time, reading old novels and waiting for the day when he would need to remember what he truly was. The Verathenian War Council did not know what to think when Queen Sirith walked in with her human father beside her and announced that he would be advising their military strategy with respect. "My queen," Admiral Kethril said carefully, "this is not the time for sentiment. We face the greatest threat in our history, and we need warriors, not pet humans." Marcus smiled at the insult, and it was not a kind smile. "Tell me, Admiral, how do you plan to defeat the Kethvari bioships? We will engage them directly with our full fleet and overwhelm them with superior firepower, and when their ships heal faster, then you can damage them." The Admiral had no answer. "What about their ground forces? Our soldiers will meet them in battle and fight with honor until victory or death, and when those soldiers feel no pain and no fear, and keep fighting even with wounds that would kill any other creature." Again, no answer. "What about their supply lines?" "The Kethvari do not have supply lines. Their bioships create everything they need." "Exactly," Marcus said. "So your plan is to fight an enemy that heals from all wounds and feels no pain, and needs no supplies, using the exact same tactics that have failed every other species that has ever faced them." He walked to the holographic display and began manipulating it with hands that suddenly seemed very confident and very capable. "Let me show you a different way." What followed was unlike anything the Verathenian generals had ever seen. Marcus dissected the Kethvari like a surgeon opening a body, finding weaknesses where none should exist, seeing patterns that no one else had noticed, understanding an enemy he had never fought as if he had been studying them his whole life. "Their bioships heal using ambient radiation," he explained. "So we do not try to destroy them directly. Instead, we detonate electromagnetic pulse weapons that starve them of the energy they need to regenerate. Without that energy, they become slow and weak and vulnerable, but EMP weapons would disable our own ships as well, only if we are foolish enough to be close when they detonate. We use long-range delivery systems, and we retreat before the pulse hits. We sacrifice territory to gain advantage." He pulled up another display, showing Kethvari troop movements. "Their soldiers feel no pain, but they still need oxygen to survive. So we target their atmospheric processors, their command vessels, their spawning pools. We do not fight their army directly. We destroy its ability to exist. That is not honorable combat." Marcus turned to look at the general who had spoken with eyes that held no warmth. "Honor is a luxury for those who can afford to lose. We cannot afford to lose, so we will fight in ways that honor does not recognize. We will be cruel and clever and absolutely without mercy." He began outlining tactics that made the Verathenian warriors shift uncomfortably. Guerrilla warfare, where small fast ships would strike at weak points and vanish before the enemy could respond. Scorched earth, where any territory the Kethvari captured would be stripped of all value. First, psychological operations, where false information would be fed to the enemy to make them doubt and hesitate and fear. Assassination of key leaders, using methods so subtle that no one would know what happened until it was too late. "This is not war," one general whispered. "This is butchery." "No," Marcus replied calmly. "This is how humans fight. We do not seek glory or honor or a beautiful death. We seek to make victory cost our enemies more than they are willing to pay. We seek to break their will before we break their bodies." He turned back to the display with a cold efficiency that made Sirith understand why the galaxy feared what humanity had once been. Humans have a concept called mutually assured destruction. It means that if you cannot win, you make sure your enemy cannot win either. You make the price of victory so high that no one is willing to pay it. But the Kethvari have never been stopped, because no one has ever fought them like this. Every species they have faced has tried to match their strength with greater strength. But humans learned long ago that strength is not what wins wars. What wins wars? Willingness to do whatever it takes, and humans will do things that other species cannot even imagine. Over the next two rotations, Marcus transformed the Verathenian military into something terrifying. He taught their pilots to fight in 3 dimensions instead of 2, and to use debris fields as cover instead of avoiding them. He taught their soldiers to retreat instead of dying gloriously, and to attack supply lines instead of enemy formations. He taught their intelligence officers to spread lies and confusion, and to turn the Kethvari's own communications against them. And he did something that no one expected. He sent a diplomatic transmission to the Kethvari flagship. Warmaster Voroth received what appeared to be a surrender negotiation, but hidden inside the code was a virus written in mathematics so elegant that the greatest Kethvari cryptographers wept trying to understand it. The virus did not destroy anything, but it opened doors that should have been locked, and it copied secrets that should have been hidden, and it left Voroth suddenly aware that someone was playing a game he did not understand. What is this? Voroth demanded when he realized what had happened. A message came. The reply from humanity. For the first time in recorded history, the Kethvari hesitated. Their scouts reported that Verathenian forces were moving in patterns that made no sense, appearing where they should not be and vanishing when they should fight. Their bioships began to starve as EMP weapons detonated in their path. With perfect timing, their soldiers captured territory only to find it poisoned and worthless and trapped. What are we fighting? Voroth's generals asked with confusion that bordered on fear. One human, Voroth growled. We are being humiliated by one old human male. He studied the reports and the impossible tactics and the virus that still haunted his systems, and he made a decision. If conventional war would not work, then perhaps something older would. He opened a channel to the Verathenian throne room and issued a challenge that had not been spoken in 10,000 years. Queen Cirith Velkoroth, I invoke the ancient right of single combat. Face me in the arena, and let our war be decided by blood and blade. If you win, my fleet withdraws forever. If you lose, your empire burns. Cirith accepted because she had no choice, because her people would never follow a queen who refused such a challenge. Marcus watched the transmission end and felt something cold settle in his chest, because he knew his daughter was strong. But Voroth was something beyond strength, something engineered for killing, something that had never been defeated in combat, and he knew that when she fell, he would have to make another choice, the last choice of an old human who had hoped to die in peace, but would instead die in fire and blood and war. The arena floated in space between the 2 fleets, a massive sphere of transparent crystal where millions could watch from their ships as history was written in blood. Cirith stood at the entrance and looked across at her opponent and felt fear sink its teeth into her heart. Voroth the Unbroken was 12 feet of engineered destruction, muscles like steel cables moving beneath skin that could turn aside plasma fire, blades growing from his arms that had cut through armor and bone and hope for 10,000 years. He had never lost a fight because he had been designed to be unbeatable. Every aspect of his being had been crafted for one purpose, and that purpose was killing. But Cirith was queen of the Verathenian Empire, and she would not shame her people by showing weakness. So she drew her ceremonial blade and stepped into the arena to die with honor. The fight lasted exactly as long as everyone expected. Cirith was good, perhaps the best warrior her species had ever produced, but Voroth was something beyond good. He moved with a speed that should have been impossible for his size and struck with a force that cracked her armor with every blow. She fought beautifully and bravely, and it did not matter at all. Within 5 minutes she was on her knees with blood pouring from a dozen wounds and her weapon shattered. On the crystal floor, Voroth stood over her with his killing blade raised and a smile of contempt on his terrible face. Your species dies with you, he said, and no one will remember you existed. The blade came down and stopped. Marcus Cole stood in the arena. No one had seen him enter. No one had heard the door open, but there he was, the small gray human in simple clothes with empty hands and quiet eyes. The challenge was to the ruler of Verathan, he said calmly. Cirith rules the empire, but in human tradition, a father may answer for his child when she has been struck down. Voroth laughed, and it was an ugly sound. You are old and weak and human. You are nothing. You are prey. Yes, Marcus agreed. I am all of those things. He helped Cirith to her feet and gently pushed her toward the door. Go, he said softly. Whatever happens next, you must survive. Your people need you, Father. He will kill you perhaps, but that is what fathers do. We stand between our children and the darkness. Cirith stumbled out of the arena, with tears streaming down her face, and Marcus turned to face the monster that had destroyed civilizations. Well, Voroth said with amusement, will you beg for mercy? It will not help, but I enjoy the sound. I do not beg. Then you will simply die. Voroth attacked with speed that should have been impossible, his blade moving faster than the eye could follow, aimed at the place where Marcus had been standing, but Marcus was no longer there. The old human moved in a way that did not look like fighting at all. Small shifts of weight and subtle turns that put him exactly where the blade was not. And Voroth's killing strike cut only air. What? Another attack and another miss and another, as the greatest warrior in the Kathvari Dominion found himself unable to hit a target that should have been easy prey. Humans are weak, Marcus said quietly. We cannot match your strength or your speed or your durability. We learned that very early in our existence. So we learned something else instead. He shifted again, and Voroth's blade passed so close to his face that it cut a strand of gray hair, but touched nothing else. We learned to watch, to predict, to understand. Your body tells me what you will do before you do it. Your muscles tense in patterns that announce your intentions. Your eyes look where your blade will go. Voroth roared with frustration and attacked with everything he had. A storm of blades and fury that would have killed anything living. Marcus flowed through it, like water through rocks, always where the attacks were not. Never fighting back but never being hit. You cannot defeat me by dodging forever. Voroth snarled. No, Marcus agreed. But I am not trying to defeat you with movement. He leaned close as Voroth overextended and whispered something that made the War Master freeze. I know about Kethver Prime. I know what really happened to your spawning queen. I know the secret your species has killed billions to protect. How? Voroth demanded with something that might have been fear, because humans watch and listen and remember everything. We have been spreading across the galaxy for 300 years, and we have been gathering information that whole time. We know secrets that would destroy empires, that would start wars, that would shatter everything your dominion has built. Marcus smiled, and it was cold and terrible. Did you think we were harmless just because we were weak? We are the survivors of our own extinction. We understand destruction in ways your species cannot imagine, and we have been preparing for this moment for longer than you have been alive. He pressed a point on Voroth's neck that should have been armored, but was not, and the great War Master felt his legs go weak. Human medicine learned every way to hurt and heal long before your kind left your spawning pools. We know pressure points and nerve clusters and the exact places where pain lives. We know how to make the strongest creature in the universe feel like it is dying. Voroth fell to his knees, unable to understand how this was happening. I do not want to kill you, Marcus said. Killing creates martyrs, and martyrs create wars. What I want is for you to go home and tell your people what happened here. Tell them that one old human brought down the unbroken. Tell them that humanity remembers what it is. He leaned down until his eyes were level with Voroth's. Tell them that if they ever threaten what we love again, there will be no warning, no challenge, no honor. We will simply destroy them so completely that even their gods will not remember their names. He pressed another point, and Voroth screamed with a pain he had never felt before. Do we understand each other? Yes, Voroth gasped. Yes, I understand. Marcus stepped back and let the War Master fall to the floor, then go and never return. Voroth crawled out of the arena and ordered his fleet to withdraw, and they were gone within the hour, running from a species they had thought were prey. Cirith found her father sitting on the floor of the arena, looking suddenly very old and very tired. How? She asked. Humans are not strong, he said softly, but we refuse to die. We refuse to surrender. We refuse to accept that anything is impossible, and that stubbornness carried us through the worst our universe could throw at us. He smiled, and it was the warm smile she remembered from her childhood. I was never hiding my power. Little star, humans do not have power. What we have is the willingness to do whatever it takes to protect what we love. She helped him to his feet, and they walked out of the arena together. Behind them the galaxy watched and wondered and feared, not the Verathenian Empire, but the small gray human who had broken the unbroken with nothing but knowledge and will. Humanity had stopped hiding, and the universe would never be the same. But Marcus did not care about the universe. He cared about his daughter, And as they walked back to their ship, he asked if she wanted to hear a story from old Earth. She said yes, because she always said yes, and somewhere in the darkness the stars burned a little brighter because a father had stood between his child and the night. The end.